Welcome everybody to the April edition of BioStock Live from a crisp spring day in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm extremely happy to say that today we have a little bit extended program. We have 8 interesting companies who are going to join us today. And we have showcases, but we also have panel discussions. And we are actually going to start right away with I'm hoping, exciting panel discussion concerning the Alzheimer's disease area. And we have invited today the 3 major players in the Swedish biotech scene who are in the Alzheimer area. And I am very pleased to welcome from Alsecure, Johan Sandin, CEO. And from BioArctic, we have Gunilla Oswald, CEO. And then Alzinova, Per Wester, CEO of Alzinova. And the special guest today is also Mattias Häggblom from the portfolio manager of Robur Medica, the Swedish, is the largest healthcare fund in Sweden?
One of the larger at least, yeah.
One of the larger, yeah. You're all very welcome. So, Alzheimer's disease, it's a huge challenge, both in terms for the patient and their relatives and close ones, but also for the healthcare business and society in general. Why is Alzheimer's disease such a huge challenge? If we start with you, Gunilla.
So I think Alzheimer's disease is a disease that most of us are familiar with. I think most of us know someone with Alzheimer's disease, and we have relatives and so forth. And it's really a disease that affects also relatives and neighbors and has a huge impact, as you said, on the society. Today, there are only symptomatic treatments on the market that can help to relieve some of the symptoms. What is lacking completely today is disease-modifying treatments that is meant to affect the underlying disease. And also, we need better diagnostic tools to be able to identify the patients at an early stage. Because the earlier we can give the treatment, the better effect the patients can have for a disease-modifying treatment. So I think there is a huge, huge need for better treatments for this population. And I'm really happy to be here today and talk more about that. And I think that we should be very proud of being Swedish people, because BioArctic, we have one of the most advanced programs where there is most hope in the Alzheimer's disease arena. And I'll talk more about the positive phase 2b results. And we are soon now in phase 3. And we are doing everything we can to get the trial to Sweden.
Thank you very much. And it says over 50%, even actually 65% of the population will at some time after 65 years of age be impacted by dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And could you say, is this number actually increasing, Johan?
So with regard to the number of people being affected, so if you look at the age of 65, approximately a few percent has Alzheimer's disease, and then that doubles every 5 years approximately. So this is clearly a huge health problem, and the major risk factor for getting dementias and Alzheimer's disease is high age. So with increasing life expectancy, you will actually see an increase in the number of people getting the disease. And actually, if you look at from a global perspective, the highest increases we are currently seeing is in the low and middle income countries, where the quality and the available capital for people making them live longer and actually getting the disease. So we're seeing an increase primarily in the low and middle income countries, but also obviously in Europe and the States.
And with the prevalence increasing and the huge challenge of not having any disease-modifying treatments available, Per, what do you say? What's your approach to trying to change that?
Well, the brain is always complicated, and I think that of all the diseases that humans are saving nowadays, we know that they are making much steps forward in cancer, and also progress is happening within cardiovascular diseases. But the brain is different, and the reason for that becoming so complicated, I think, is because there is no really good animal models that you can test your candidates on before you go into humans, because the human brain is so advanced, and we see so many specific things happening to a brain which is deteriorating. And this is, I think, one of the biggest problems that we have, because it's not really possible to test the drugs until you are actually giving them to humans. I think it's very much value to, if possible, when you do the first clinical trial in humans, you should go for patients directly, because then you can also try to catch one of these biomarkers which is also connected to the disease. And that's then the first time the drug is really tested. It's not really tested when it's in preclinical settings. So I think that is one of the reasons why it has been so difficult, and it has been so I mean, some people say that you take out a transgenic mouse and you find a drug which can actually treat this mouse to become normal. This doesn't mean that we have found a new treatment for Alzheimer's disease for humans. So
unfortunately,
no.
Historically we've seen many failures in this area. I think I saw a summary that said that it was 85 projects or something like that in the last decade that had been terminated because of different reasons. Gunilla, you said that BioArctic, you are one of the companies that are come the furthest, at least here in Sweden. What's
globally, I would say, but thanks to ASI, our partner.
Okay. And what do you think is going to be the clue that makes the breakthrough?
No, I just want also to continue to build on what Per just said. I've been working with Alzheimer's disease for drug industry for many years, for AstraZeneca for many years, and for BioArctic for 6 years. And everyone should know that drug development comes with risk, and of course Alzheimer's disease is also comes with risk. Different ways to mitigate the risk is to see if you can have a strong link to genetic aspects, and if you can have a strong link and show histopathology in combination with the best we can do from preclinical trials. So what I think is really important is to understand as much as possible about your mechanism of action of the compound. And BioArctic, we are founded by Professor Lars Landfelt from Uppsala University. And he found first the Swedish mutation and then the Arctic mutation of Alzheimer's disease. And then he saw that these patients with the Arctic mutation, they had increased levels of the misfolded toxic soluble aggregated form of A-beta that he called protofibrils or oligomers. And I think it is important to selectively target those toxic species. And that is what BAN2401 is doing, and that is the compound which has shown the most promising effect in clinical stage globally, and it's driven by our partner ASI. And ASI is the compound who developed donepezil or Aricept, which is the most commonly sold symptomatic treatment. So it's a company who really focus on Alzheimer's disease in a broad way. So I really think the mechanism of action, and we think selectively binding those toxic misfolded species, not the monomers and not so much the fibrils, but really those toxic. And it seems like the whole field is going more and more there. We have seen that solanezumab, which went mainly for the monomers, it didn't work. It had a small effect, but not enough. We just recently saw that aducanumab was stopped, and that's mainly targeting the fibrils. So we think BAN2401 really is targeting the right species, which is called the protofibrous oligomer. And I think it's so cool. It's a Swedish invention. I'm really proud of that. And it's really ASI who should have a lot of compliments for how they are driving the clinical program.
And speaking of programs, Johan, Al-Secure, you have a twofold approach, so to speak. Can you tell us something about that?
Yes, so we're having actually two different type of therapies targeting then two cardinal features of the disease. One is the, as Gunilla mentioned, the buildup of amyloid aggregates in the brain, and the other one is then focused on the neuronal dysfunction and the loss of communication between nerve cells that cause the cognitive deficits in the disease. So targeting two different kind of patient populations, if you will. One, NeuroRestore, which is then a symptomatic therapy targeting patients in the later stages of the disease, and Alstatin, which is a gamma secretase modulator targeting the production of amyloid and buildup of amyloid aggregates in the brain.
And looking at you mentioned, Gunilla, early diagnostics as one tool. Why would that be? Why is that important? Early diagnostics.
Well, I think mostly because when we see patients get symptoms, many people or scientists now say it's too late. So you need to find these patients before symptoms occur. And that is a very, very difficult target to reach because everybody is not agreeing upon what these diagnostic tools should actually show. I know that in Gothenburg we have Professor Kai Blennow and Henrik Zetterberg, who is among the world leaders in this field, and it's very, very interesting. We talk to them regularly, of course, because we are almost next door to them, and they help us a lot. But they are developing new kinds of assays to detect from CNF and CSF and from also blood samples. And there is an interesting cooperation that we are actually involved in with them to see if it's possible to find the right species from the CSF, sorry, from patients actually. So this is something that is developed also in Sweden, which is again very good. And I think besides that, I mean, of course, coming back to what we talked a little bit about earlier, when we talk about this A-beta target, we all know now that not all A-beta are the same. Some of it is protective and others are toxic. And if you have a treatment which targets something which is not toxic, you might even worsen the situation for the patient. We have seen that a lot with the BACE inhibitors, which were presented during last year, where they actually saw that brains were shrinking. This is not what you want to see if you treat the patient with Alzheimer. And that's just an example. We have all heard about this ARIAS, which is also a mistargeted side effect. So because the toxic forms are so rare, these protofibrils or oligomers or whatever we call them, they are so rare So if you should be able to find them, you must have antibodies available only for them. If they can also, each antibody can also bind to other species, it's not probably going to find the oligomers, toxic forms, and you will not see an effect. This is something that is crucial when you go in with the treatment, and that's why we think, with all respect to what has been happening earlier days, that the real oligomer specific treatment has not been tested yet in humans. But of course, some people have other ideas how they can show that their treatments are oligomer specific to 100%, and that is. Whether that is shown or not, I think this is absolutely needed for a treatment to become to give a strong effect. Of course, there can be signs of effects if you have treatments that binds different sources.
Gunilla, I got the feeling that you wanted to reply on that.
Yes. So I agree with you. BAN2401 doesn't target 100%, but it's oligomer protofibril selective, and it does not bind the monomers, but it binds the fibrils to some extent. So you're right there that it's not 100%, but we have shown clinical effect. And it's not 100% effect. But in the phase 2b trial that was reported last year, it's a huge trial, 856 patients in the US, Canada, Europe, Japan, and South Korea. They were treated for 18 months, either with placebo or with one of the 5 doses of BAN2401. And what I think is really promising, and why I really believe in this, is that we had an effect on clinical outcomes, 3 different clinical scales. We also showed that we are clearing amyloid from the brain. It's not the right amyloid, but it's the best we can show. And also, really importantly, we also show that we have an effect on neurodegenerative markers like total tau, phospho-tau, neurogranin, and neurofilament light. All of those together says that this has the potential to become a disease-modifying treatment. And you're right, if we think, and many with us, that if you're targeting the fibrils, you also have a risk of getting this side effect called area E, amyloid-related imaging abnormalities, where it looks on MRI scans like you have a brain edema, and it's mainly without any symptoms, but it looks, you see it on MRI, but it's all reversible, and we had less than 10% on our top dose who had that. So I think that BAN2401 in this huge trial, it showed good effect on clinical measurements, good effect on clearing amyloid from the brain, good disease-modifying biomarkers, together with a good safety tolerability profile. So Eisai, our partner, they have discussed with authorities, and after these discussions with authorities in the US, Europe, and Japan, they have decided to do 1 phase 3 trial instead of 2. So now they have initiated a huge trial with 1,566 patients globally. That will test the one dose that showed the most promising results versus placebo treatment for 18 months with these earlier Alzheimer's disease patients. So I just want to build on what you said earlier also, that previously, and those compounds on the market today for symptomatic treatments, they have mild, moderate, and severe Alzheimer's disease. We are targeting what we call early Alzheimer's disease. That is mild Alzheimer, and the stage before, called mild cognitive impairment with Alzheimer pathology. Then interestingly, the regulatory authorities in Europe and in the US are also advocating for that we should try to go even earlier, which they call stage 1 and stage 2, which is even before it's called prodromal or mild cognitive impairment. And then it's really important to have the biomarkers to identify the patients and to have sensitive clinical scales to be able to. And Eisai has also announced that they are looking into the possibility and explore BAN2401 in those earlier stages with consortia.
And I'll just like to add and intersect there as well. just to mention that alstatin, that our disease-modifying treatment affects the production of all amyloid forms, so regardless if it's oligomers, fibrils, protofibrils, or plaques. But just before we leave the diagnostics area, I think I'd like to build on what Gunilla said, because I think this is a really critical area where Sweden has played a quite important role with Kai Blanov's and Henrik Zetterberg's groups, for example. I think where we're now seeing much more focus on novel initiatives we've seen in the US, for example, the Diagnostics Accelerator program that Bill Gates and also now the Amazon CEO has been funding, and I think those are critical initiatives. And we're also seeing the kind of start of other, not only kind of spinal taps and brain scans, but also blood-based biomarkers, which I think also is kind of a segue into moving into this earlier population that Gunilla mentioned. I think clearly the whole field is now seeing, and that's been shown now in many clinical studies, that the disease starts many years before symptom onset. So we know now the disease probably starts some 10 to 15 years before symptom onset. So we need to go into early in the disease, and I think as was said previously, both the FDA and EMA are issuing new guidelines to move into early stages of the disease. They have also seen the kind of that we've moved forward in the research around Alzheimer's disease. We know more about the disease now than we did 10 years ago. So we also need to change the regulatory requirements and be able to move in early into the disease.
So then, with a complex situation, Matthias, I know you monitor the international scene very closely. What's your take on the Alzheimer's challenge from an investor's perspective?
I guess one comment would be it's one of the last large diseases with no relevant treatment. So everyone can understand that anyone with a treatment effect will have a commercial success, which is why historically so many companies have invested so heavily in this field. The last 20 years, Pharma wrote a report 2018 that $700 billion US has been invested in Alzheimer's, with limited success. 4 drugs the last 20 years, one of them a combination of the previously approved. So the opportunity is large. I'd like to add maybe the perspective also that I sense an increasing debate within the community whether or not the A-beta hypothesis is the relevant. And I do that as I'm not part of the A-beta hypothesis, but I think it's relevant to lift that because it's been the dominant hypothesis for the last 2-3 decades, and we now had 9 phase 3 trials with antibodies failing there. And I think it's difficult to, if you've been in research, you spent 2-3 decades of your life to finally admit that, maybe this was the wrong path. 30 to 40% of Alzheimer's patients does not have plaque when they die in their disease. So there's still a debate around all what we've been discussing and so forth. But I was surprised when I read the paper in New England Journal of Medicine 2018 from one of the groups who had published their phase 3 data on BACE inhibitors from the Merck, that under discussion said maybe it's time to reconsider if this is truly the right approach. And I think we have an interesting decision to be made by one of the strongest supporters of Alzheimer's research, Biogen, coming up here in how they will move forward with BAN 2401. They are in collaboration with ASI, and they are refusing to comment on what their intention is post their disappointing aducanumab outcome here earlier this year. They saw the stock price drop sharply, and they are currently doing a strategic review what to do since they spent so much money on this. So I think I don't have a strong opinion. I'm just saying that there is a debate ongoing in the community. I find that interesting, and we've heard various alternatives to explain the historical outcomes, but it's still a fact that we have had very limited success, unfortunately, with drug development so far in this field.
You're both waving. You go first, Pat.
I think everybody is hearing what you're saying, but I still think that what most of the specialists say is that there is difference between different A-beta species, and that is very important. It might actually be that we are this close to find a treatment which will work within A-beta, even though there has been a lot of failures. Don't forget that all these failures have shown some signs of effect. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them has shown some signs of effect, which means that there is really something in there. I think that nobody longer believes that the plaque load is going to change. If you release the plaque load, that will then make the patient become better. But there are other forms of A-beta which are much more important, and they are much more difficult to trace. They are so difficult to trace. It's like finding the needle in a haystack. And if you have all these antibodies which targets to everything out there, some of them might by chance bind to one of the oligomeric forms, but most of them are out there doing harm, more or less, because they cause these ARIAs and make things become worse instead of better. So I think it's a big mistake, and I think many of the specialists around the globe also states that it's not A-beta as a field, but it's A-beta oligomeric forms that is the real problem here. And that must be not forgotten, because it's so important that we don't take everything into one, to solve all the things with one solution when there are so many different species.
Can I continue to build on that, please? So I agree completely with Per. I think don't say A-beta and think that it's the same. It's a lot of different species within A-beta you need to understand, unfortunately. And I think that also what BAN2401 has shown that it targets the oligomers and protofibrils of A-beta, but it also has effect on tau, total tau, phospho-tau, neurogranin, and neurofilament light, neurodegenerative markers, which is more downstream in the process of pathology. So I think, and there is, in all scientific debates, there are, those who believe in amyloid and those who believe in tau and so forth. So there is always debate in scientific community. But I think that let's look at the data and the fact, what we have shown with BAN2401. We have an effect on A-beta, but we also have an effect on tau and other neurodegenerative markers, which I think is important to look at. And then also, I don't think that we will sort everything with the first compound. I'm sure there will be combination therapies between different amyloid species and tau, and also a small molecule that maybe then targets the buildup, and an antibody that also can take away the toxic species even when there is, because there is a combination of buildup and elimination, which makes an imbalance. And an antibody can really also take away those toxic species. And maybe a vaccine as well in the future. So I really think there is a need for many compounds, and I really hope that many companies continue to fight this awful disease. I really, really hope so. And I think that we are close to seeing some true progress here.
Yeah. Well, let's hope so. Johan?
Yeah, just to build on that as well, I also believe strongly in combination therapies. I mean, what we're looking at is a disease which has a progression over 30 years. And it would be, I mean, there are clearly different processes along the disease progression. So, I mean, in the really late stage of the disease, probably there will be different types of therapies than early in the disease. We know, I mean, just looking at the amyloid hypothesis, because I think it's a fair question when these types of trials fail, to discuss and debate in around what type of grounds do we have to believe in this hypothesis? Well, the amyloid hypothesis has quite strong or have very strong genetic support. I mean, if we look at familiar forms of Alzheimer's disease, all forms all cases of familiar disease are based on mutations that result in accumulation of amyloid and early onset disease. It's also seen in Down syndrome patients where you have this trisomy, which also duplicates then the APP gene, causing then early onset Alzheimer's disease. So I think there's strong genetic evidence, there's clearly strong biomarker evidence, there's clearly strong biological evidence for the hypothesis. But again, to be able to test the hypothesis as we've been discussing here, I think it's about choosing the right target, choosing the right stage of the disease, before you can say anything about whether the hypothesis is wrong or right. So I don't think it's black and white. So clearly, I think there are more things to take into consideration.
So hope lives on. Matthias, from an investor's perspective again, when you have a field like the Alzheimer field, which has been troubled with so many disappointments over the years, and a recent failure, what does that mean for the investors' general attitude towards going into this field? Because the promise is huge if they find something.
Well, happily so, we can see we have 3 companies here today represented, in Sweden. So, there is still interest and support from financial markets to fund these initiatives, which is great. And we're also seeing, increased interest from some of the more, philanthropic players like Bill Gates. For 2 years back now has been increasingly interested not only in malaria and HIV, but also Alzheimer's specifically, given the challenge that he and his group sees, the next decades ahead. Unfortunately, we've also seen some large cap pharma companies exiting the field. So we've seen the well-known decision by AstraZeneca to exit the field and open up possibilities for others. But we've also seen, some of the other fellows. I think Pfizer departed here a few years ago. Some are more unknown. Is Lilly still committed? Is Merck still committed? They've had large failures. I think they publicly say that they are committed, but looking at their pipelines, they are less so. So the field is somewhat changing. I refer to Biogen coming up here again. They will have to make a decision how committed they are shortly. They're under big pressure now from financial markets. Will they spend more money on this? And at the same time, we're seeing new entrants here. So we have Sanofi signing a big deal last year. We have Novo Nordisk exploring GLP-1 in Alzheimer's. So there's still not, there's not net people going down in terms of interested parties here, but this field is somewhat changing, I'd say.
Mm. And then you can argue for perseverance. You have to keep working focused and take in all the new what you learn and add it to the knowledge bank, so to speak. But on the other hand, there are also completely new approaches. I read something about interesting, speaking of diagnostics, that they were going to use the voice to actually detect if you have an onset of dementia or Alzheimer's, which sounds most like science fiction to me, but hopefully it can help. Yeah. From your perspective, Matthias, what do you think? Where will we be in 5 years?
5 years is a short time in drug development. So, unfortunately, but also we have IP to protect those, breakthroughs that then happens to really get a return on those initiatives. 5 years. I mean, we're going to have a number of additional phase 3 trials reading out, including Gunillas here, BAN 2401, and we're going to have some additional. Progress in clinical development, maybe towards at least proof of concept in phase 2. Beyond that, there is also the pharma industry isn't so interested in talking about it, but preventive initiatives is worth highlighting. So there was a publication in Lancet in 2014 by Norton, who concluded that a third of the Alzheimer's population have risk factors that can be addressed and potentially have a helpful benefit. A group at Karolinska, also I think in Lancet 2015, had a finger study where they had a bit more than 1,000 Finnish patients that were not Alzheimer patients, but beyond 60 and fairly average, slightly below average cognitive scores, and they had if I recall correctly, in a 2-year trial where they used dietary advice, exercise, social interaction, brain examples of using your brain and exercising that way. They had a 25% improvement on a score they used for cognitive improvement. So again, that doesn't fit all, and I guess maybe that's a reminder that there's a lot of initiatives here that can be helpful, and there is not going to be a single one.
I really, really support what you said there, Matthias. I think, everyone should take on as much as you can about the lifestyle, and we should start as early as possible, and then use thinking about how we exercise and how we interact with people and get social stimulants and so forth. And then I think it's a combination of different treatments that we will see. So at BioArctic, we have then BAN2401, which Eisai is driving, and they and Biogen are sharing the costs. And there we will see the results in, Eisai has said by 2022. So then we know if the phase 3 trial has been able to confirm the phase 2b positive results. And then at BioArctic, we also work on 4 other programs. We have a backup to BAN2401, but then we have 3 early programs, 3 completely different mechanisms of actions, all disease-modifying and all antibodies, but different mechanism of actions. And I think it's really, really important that we continue with the research in this area, because there will not be one thing that fits all. I think it really, really is important with continued discovery to really help to get better treatments for the patients. And I really hope, and I believe that we are on the right track and have the first antibody on the market to help patients. But there will be need for more. So I really, really hope there will be continued effort in this really important area.
Per, you had something?
Yes, I just want to agree with everything you say here, and I also think that it's very much valuable to see that the more specific drugs that are coming to markets now are probably going to be more successful and probably being more effective. Because they are not diluted, so to speak, to the wrong targets, but getting their actual target, which is the one that needs to be found. And don't forget that the oligomeric forms are clearly in very, very, very low concentrations. They are actually very difficult to find. So if you have antibodies as a treatment, which are not targeted to the oligomeric forms, they would probably have very, very difficulties to find them. And I think also beside that, it can also become a cost issue, because we know that antibody treatment, we have seen that already in different therapeutic areas. They cost about $20,000-30,000 US dollars per year. I don't know if that's going to be the case with this one, but that's the area where we are playing with antibodies. And if we are going to treat patients preventive early before we see any side effects or any symptoms, it's going to be a lot of people who need a lot of treatment for a lot of money. So I think it's a great value to use the body's own immune system, which is the path that we have taken, so that you can easily trigger the immune system to make the body itself produce the antibodies which are targeting the oligomers. And that's, I think, is maybe the only treatment which is possible to give for preventive treatment, because it's possible to treat on a broader base, not only for cost reasons but also for practical reasons. I mean, you need to go every second week for a shot, and maybe that can make big influences for people. Whereas with an active vaccine, you're more free to come to the hospital maybe once in 6 months or once in 12 months. We don't really know yet, but that's the area where we are looking.
I just want to comment on that. I don't believe that antibodies for all the time will need to come to the hospital. I think that's a common misunderstanding. So I think there will be possibilities, I think, in the future for home infusions. And then I think we will see more and more development of subcutaneous administrations as well. So I think there will be different ways of treating antibodies as well.
And just to add to that, I think I want to echo obviously what everybody said, but I mean, we've been talking about primary prevention, we're talking about secondary prevention, and I mean, these, again, talking about the long length of the disease progression and the huge amount of people, there will clearly be possibility for different types of therapies here. And when it comes to, certainly when it comes to secondary prevention, I think the small molecule compounds such as statin, our gamma secretase modulator, is highly suited for that role, kind of affecting the production of amyloid at an early stage of the disease. And actually, there are this really interesting Icelandic family, which, in contrast to the rest of the known mutations in the amyloid gene, actually has a mutation that prevents them from getting the Alzheimer's disease. And the mutation actually only causes a 20 to 30% reduction in amyloid production, and that prevents them from getting the disease. So I think, again, coming back to, if we start early enough, then you can actually prevent the buildup of amyloid and actually the advent of the disease. So I think that's clearly important. Another thing that I think we haven't discussed much about is also symptomatics, because clearly there's a large population group of people that are in the later stage of the disease that also need effective therapies. So I think there is clearly a strong need for better symptomatic therapies, both when it comes to the cognitive symptoms, but also when it comes to the behavioral and psychological symptoms of the disease, which is a major problem for both the affected but also their relatives. So I think that's an important point to make.
I think we can agree that many challenges remain. There's, though, comfort in seeing that there are strong beliefs in your concepts, your various concepts, and we are looking forward to following the progression of your projects and on a global scale as well, of course. And hopefully we'll be here anytime in the future and talking about what was actually right, what was the solution. So we are running out of time, so I would like to thank you, all of you, for coming today and sharing your knowledge and your input. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we are going to need a few moments to prepare for our next speaker, and we are going to change the focus of the program from Alzheimer's disease to something completely different, as they say in the news. The next company is based in Lund at Medicon Village, and they have a twofold approach. They actually have one project focused on loss of hair and one project focusing on diabetes. So I'm very pleased to welcome Jan Alenfall, CEO of Follicum. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you so much.
see if we can get this one working. Ja, det bara trycker på den tror jag. Det går fram. Yes. Okay. Ska vi se där. Jag kan sätta på den.
Hello everyone, my name is Jan Alafall. I'm the CEO of Follicum and we are based in Lund. And this is the usual disclaimer. The team is very small. We are a virtual company and we have only 4 employees at the moment. So my background is 25 years in pharmaceutical industry, early stage, clinical stage projects, mostly been working with peptides. And then we have Gunnar Gårdemyr. He has 35 years experience in pharmaceutical development, mostly in mergers, acquisitions and business development in big companies, also internationally. And then Maria Ekblad, she has about 20 years of pharmaceutical early stage development, mostly preclinical and before the project goes into man. And the last person is Susanna Schele. She has 12 years experience from Novo Nordisk, and we recruited her about a year ago, where she has been working with their GLP-1 analogs. So we are a fairly good team, but we outsource most of our work to international key contract research organizations or working with academic groups. The company has 2 projects, one advanced stage in hair growth, which is in clinical phase 2, and the other one is diabetes, which is in early phase development. And they are actually multi-billion-dollar markets both. Hair growth is expected to reach $6 billion in 5 years from now, and diabetes is tenfold that also in 5 years. So you can understand these are major important markets for us. There are high unmet need in hair growth. Normally you think about older men losing their hair, but actually very common that women also lose hair, and that can be very traumatic. The problem today is that there are few treatment alternatives available for hair growth or inducing hair growth or preventing loss of hair growth. Only 2 pharmaceutical products, and they are old and they suffer from low efficacy, low response rates, and also some adverse events. There are actually very few pipeline drugs in development internationally, which is good for us. And we have taken this project to clinical phase 2A with injection, as I will describe soon for you. And we have shown also that we have no safety issues with the project. We have recently developed a topical formulation, which is very important for us because we have done this with injections, which is not so convenient for people to treat themselves. So with this new topical formulation, we expect this to be very convenient and easy to use. For the diabetes projects, we are not targeting sort of insulin release only. We are targeting the more important diabetic complications. And many people suffer from complications, both those having type 1 diabetes or those having type 2 diabetes. So this is a very important field where we also have shown that we can protect the beta cells from becoming sort of sick. Our research is focused on our own proteins in the bodies where we develop peptides from these. A peptide is a small fragment of a protein. And we are a very small company. We have very fast, cost-effective development. So just to show you what will happen with these 2 markets in 5 years. They will expand, and for the hair growth, it will be almost $6 billion in 2024. And for the type 2 diabetes market, we will have almost $60 billion. So this is huge. And many people suffer from hair loss problems, both males and also females. And many people suffer from diabetes. And you can see also many people die from diabetes complications, which is very sad. So just to give you a little bit flavor or the background to our project, they seem to be very different, but they are actually connected in that they have the background of either losing hair or having diabetes is an impaired tissue repair. So if you have biological stress, you have inflammation, you have metabolic disease, or potentially also an autoimmune disease, all this leads to an impaired tissue repair mechanisms. And losing hair is one, diabetes is another, and there are also other multiple conditions you can have with this. So for example, how can hair and diabetes, how does those 2 indications relate to each other? So for example, when the hair follicle grows, it grows into different stages, so-called the hair cycle. It needs insulin to be able to grow and generate a hair. So if you have lack of insulin, the hair growth stops. So hair loss can actually be an early sign of diabetes or early stage of diabetes. So this is just one example. There are other examples as well. So they are not too far away as one normally could think about. The two projects we have, the hair growth is an advanced stage. We are now advancing towards the next clinical trial. It will be a phase 2A study with our new topical formulation starting year end. So before that, we have a scientific advice going on with the German authorities to be able to discuss exactly what we are going to do. We know exactly what we're going to do. We are going to do a short tox study to bridge our injection studies to the topical. We need to do a topical local irritation study to just confirm the safety. And then we need to produce the clinical trial material before we can start the clinical trial. So we accept this to start around the year end. And mid-autumn 2020, we expect to have the readout data from this proof of concept study. When that is finally done, when we have good data, we will partner. The other project is an early stage project, as you can imagine. So now we are running multiple in vivo, in vitro studies, looking at diabetes and diabetes complications, how these peptides work. And this is important to generate a good preclinical package before we approach big pharma. And we intend to do so. We have discussions ongoing already to know exactly what they prefer and what they would like to have. But it's very important for us to generate a good preclinical package, because in diabetes, the partnering is done earlier, preferably before clinical stage, at least phase 2. So as I said, we are working with peptide drugs that comes from ourselves. So we are looking at our body and looking at proteins from our body, and we generate peptides that can be potentially effective in various conditions, especially the tissue repair mechanisms. They all are considered to be safe. Today, with the new technology, they are easy to manufacture and very cost-effective. They are also very potent. That means you only need to administer small amounts of them in the body. And all in all, as it is a peptide coming from our own, the development pathway is relatively fast. And it's also a little bit less complicated than if you compare to a small molecule. So our hair project, where are we at the moment? So hair loss is affecting millions of people every year, not only males, but also females. And you can imagine a young boy or even a female, how traumatic this could be. There's actually also people are committing suicide because of this. So this is quite important for many, many people. And this could also be culturally dependent, because you, for example, in Asia, if you lose your hair, you also lose your face, sort of. So this is really important. And today's treatment options are very, very few. You only have 2 pharmaceutical drugs, and they actually was originally developed for something else. And you do not have any help or assistance from the general practitioner today. You are left alone with no options. So they are old drugs. They have lost the patent protection. They are generic competition. Many companies are producing and selling these type of drugs. And there are very few of these in the pipeline. So low competition. And what they are, the first one is finasteride. It's a tablet. It was originally developed for prostatic cancer, only allowed for men. It's a prescription drug. The other one is minoxidil. It was a blood pressure drug, and it's now available over the counter, so anyone can buy it on the pharmacy. And it's indicated both for males and females. But they all have limited effect, low number of responders, and also some nasty side effects. And I think particularly the few treatment options for females is very important to think about. Because our peptide, we aim to develop this both for males and females. So far, we have shown in over 100 subjects or patients that we do not have any side effects. We have signs of clinical effect despite injections and very few times administrations. We have now a convenient formulation developed that allows people to treat this with this product at home every day. And again, this is a novel peptide with a unique mode of action. So this can be a first-in-class product. So if we look on the effect, what is previously published, you see in the top row, there's a study of minoxidil, 2 times daily applications for 6 months gave rise to 7 hairs. And if you continue that treatment for an additional 6 months, up to 12 months, you see that the effect was declining. Only 4 hairs was observed. And finasteride, that trial was 11 months long, and the effect was 7 hairs per square centimeter. In our recent study on the bottom, we had only 3 times injections for 3 months with the same effect level, 7 hairs per square centimeter. So minoxidil is 5 times higher dosage. So if we can increase our dosage with the convenient topical applications, we hope that the effect can be even better. So this is the development pathway. We know exactly what to do now the coming months. We have the scientific advice meeting. We are going to do the tox studies, a small, uncomplicated tox study to bridge between the injection to the topical application, produce the clinical trial material that the patient's going to use, and then start the study at the end of the year. This will be a 3 months study. Hopefully, we can convince the authorities to allow a 4 months duration, but that we will have to wait and see. But this study will use the topical formulation. It will be daily applications. The patients will use it at home every day. So we are particularly proud of having being able to develop this topical formulation, because the key issue here is to have the peptide stable, to have good skin penetration, so the peptide goes across skin and is taking up in the skin tissue, and it goes then to the hair follicles and activate the hair follicles. So this is very good, and the data from our animal study shows the blue line is minoxidil 2 times a day on these mice, gave rise to hair, and the green is our topical formulation once daily only, and we are identical. And we have room for increasing the concentration of our peptide in this formulation, so we could potentially even increase the effect. So this is very, very good for us. The patent application was recently filed, and that gives us 7 to 8 years more patent protection up to 2040, should the patent be approved. So that's great. So if we switch to the diabetes indication, here it is a little bit different compared to the hair product, because here are only a number of big companies. The hair field is represented by a number of smaller companies, or if you compare on a global level. So here we only have maybe 10 or 12 different companies that are focusing on diabetes, and the market is huge. The problem today with diabetes is that many people are suffering from diabetes complications. You can keep the blood sugar level under control, but it still, despite the good treatment options, it is variable and it causes a lot of complications. For example, cardiovascular disease, liver disease, or even hard-to-heal wounds on the feet, leading to amputations. So it is really, really difficult. So we aim to control blood glucose levels, but the important thing here that the important factor for our peptide is that distinguishes us from many other products is that we target the complications. So we can potentially prevent or decrease cardiovascular disease problems like plaque formation in the blood vessels. We can improve the beta cell functionality by protecting them so they can respond to high level of blood glucose and release insulin. The inflammation that is present normally in diabetes patients, hopefully we can reduce that, and also protect the problems you normally have with the liver. So here's a slide showing you the distribution of our peptide after subcutaneous injection. So the peptide has been administered on the back of the animal, and it is taking up in the pancreas. So the more black, the more peptide. And if you look on the right-hand side, you see a Langerhans islet in the pancreas. The Langerhans islands are those small islands where the beta cells reside and release insulin. So the red is our peptide, it binds to the beta cells. So the peptide actually has the capability to go to the pancreas, go to the beta cells and protect them. And if you expose beta cells for a long time in high glucose levels, it is toxic. So the black bar actually shows the effect of high levels of glucose. The white bar is the control. So you can see that the ability to release insulin has decreased a lot with high glucose. So the beta cells, they are sick. And if we add our peptide, and you see that we have a number of different peptides, we can actually restore this and even improve the functionality of the beta cell. And you see also one GLP-1 molecule, and we are actually better than that. So this is very, very interesting for us, which is probably a unique function and also a first-in-class drug, potentially. So the benefits we have with our product, that we are affecting all the complications, not only controlling blood glucose levels, but also affecting the diabetes complications that many patients suffer from. And we have some favorable things also. It's a small, uncomplicated peptide, easy to manufacture, quite low cost of goods. It's not immunogenic, and it is first in class. But it also allows for combination therapies, which some of the other competitors doesn't do. So it's an interesting development pathway we have in front of us. We know exactly what to do here too. We are now running a lot of in vitro studies for looking at how these peptides work in both type 1 and type 2 diabetes models. We're looking for achieving information how this peptide works on a more, let's say, detailed level, what is called mode of action studies, especially on the beta cell protection, but also looking for how this interacts with the cells on receptor levels and also the intracellular signaling pathways. So we are part of a big network that actually financed a postdoc. A postdoc is a person after disputation, after doctoral studies, that's going to expand the research. So we have one person now, soon, just in a couple of days. This has finally been completed, the recruitment. And that person will work on these very important issues that the potential partner and the authorities requires before we can go into partnering. And then we have the usual development pathway. So this is the big consortia we have, and you have a number of big companies as well. So we are part of this, giving access to a huge number of academic researchers, access to models and techniques, and we also have a very experienced scientific advisory boards underway. And the professor we are working with here in this have also received external grants, 1.4 million Danish crowns, which is about 2 million Swedish crowns, for directed studies on our peptide class. So with that, I'll leave you with 2 projects, first-in-class projects in hair growth and in diabetes, with unique market, and we have, if successful, a future opportunity with multiple indications in the tissue repair system. And we have, of course, a strong IP as well. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Jon. Very interesting presentation. Yeah, strong IP protection just got stronger today.
Yes.
We saw the news today about the new patent.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest benefits of going now further into the topical formulation and showing good results there?
Yeah, so first of all, the topical formulation is not only important for the hair project, but it can also form a basis of a formulation technology that can be applied for other peptides, because peptides are notoriously difficult to formulate in a stable formulation that you can apply on skin. So it's a two-way opportunity for the hair growth. Yes, we now can advance into the clinical development with a product that is easy to apply for patients on a daily basis at home. And then a next step, a business opportunity for offering this peptide, or no, not peptide, formulation technology for other peptides to other companies.
Okay, so that opens up a whole new area, or
Yes.
a whole new business area for you then.
Yes.
Can you say anything about the potential of that?
It's huge.
It's huge.
There are only 2 peptides on the market in a topical product today.
Okay.
And there are hundreds of them in development. So if we are successful, that's
That's going to be good.
That's going to be really good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Having then seen the results that you have so far in the hair growth project, you were actually in a conference recently,
Yes,
presenting. What's the interest like for at this point?
I mean, as I said, there are only two products, two kind of drugs on the market, so it's a really interesting field to be in because the market need is huge. The conference I attended to last week was the biggest conference for us, the World Hair Conference. 900 participants from 70 countries, and it was very clinically oriented this time. It usually is more like a scientific conference, so it's interesting. The response is quite interesting because all the researchers that need more tools to help people. So they are very positive, and again, unlike many other indications, if you're going to do clinical trials in hair loss, there are thousands of volunteers. So it's really, really easy to do clinical trials.
Yeah, we actually got people contacting BioStock asking for if it was possible to enter your clinical trials. So
yes.
I believe you in that. So you have a strategy that's focused on partnering both of your projects, main projects. What do you think at this point is indicate that you will succeed?
Well, first of all, the proof of concept in our hair project needs to be completed before we can partner. We don't want to partner before that, and that's due to that the value of the product is so much higher if we can succeed with the topical product. For the diabetes project, we would like to partner as early as possible. But again, we don't want to partner too early because the value of the project will be limited. So we are balancing this. So we have lined up companies in both fields, and we are having continuous discussions with them in order for us to increase the shareholder value as much as possible. And to secure that we can actually partner. So the clinical trial, for example, in the hair growth needs to be in line what potential partners want also.
And in the diabetes project, you are part of a very strong network there with lots of big players, and one can only imagine that you're keeping very close attention to what's happening in your project then. So I guess you have sort of everything lined up for you there if it all goes well.
Yeah, I mean it's data driven at this point. So if our preclinical package is good, then I'm very optimistic. But yeah, it's data driven, so we need to look at the data, of course.
Yeah.
But so far so good. We have generated a lot of interest.
Yeah, I think we have time for maybe a couple of questions. Are there any questions from the audience? Yeah.
In the hair project, are you restarting the hair cycle, or are you changing from finer hair to coarser hair?
A very good question. Hair growth takes time. So what we have seen in the previous clinical study, that we have increased the number of hairs in the growth phase. So potentially we are starting from a resting hair follicle to a growing hair follicle. So that we have seen. We have also seen a little bit short time period to say anything definite.
Yes.
What is your financial situation?
Yeah, our financial situation at the moment is relatively good. We about a month ago, 2 months ago, completed a share subscription option, and the company was successful in achieving 100% of that, meaning 15.3 million Swedish crowns.
How long will that sustain your?
Well, of course, I mean, this business is expensive, so it will not be sufficient for running all the 2 projects until the end of that.
No, of course. And having them run these parallel projects, or running these parallel projects as a small virtual company, what do you think is the key to success so far for you?
I think it's 2 things. We have shown that we are able to take a project from early stage to clinical stage. That's one. We know what to do. We know how to do it. And we know with whom to do it. The other thing is that we have already from the start being in contact with potential partners. So we are not developing a project that nobody wants. It's just a matter of reaching the level where the interest is highest and the best. So that would be probably the biggest challenge in having endurance to develop the project until it's ready for partnering.
Well, the importance of starting your partnering activities at an early stage, we will actually address later in this program today, because we have something that new that we call Deal Maker Forum, where we will talk to a couple of companies who have done that trip. So, Jan, thank you very much for today. Very interesting. Sure, you will be able to get some questions in the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So we are actually going to take a short break now. We have a slight change of program. There was one company that unfortunately could not join us. They were supposed to start at 11:20. We are looking into if it's possible to change the next coming speaker to come on at 11:20 instead. But so I would advise all of you looking at online that you should check in at 20 past. And if you don't see anything, then we're going to be back at 11:40 instead. So either way, I see you here back here in a short bit. Thank you very much.
Lily Cohen and beta, what number is it? 24, I can't quite see. 26?
So if you could actually start by walking through, this is close to production unit, if you can start by walking through what's new about this Spot Mini.
You know, we've redesigned many of the components.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. I hope you are refreshed from a short break that we had in the program here at BioStock Live from Stockholm, Sweden. We are ready for our next speaker, and we're going to listen to Oncology Venture, the CEO of the company, Peter Buhl Jensen. Welcome, Peter.
Tack för det. I've been advised to speak English or American here. I think I speak wonderful Swedish, but it's not everybody who agrees with that. So Oncology Venture, my name is Peter Buhl Jensen. I'm a medical oncologist, and I've worked with, you can say, translational medicine for I think since '87, really trying to get information from, you can say, from the lab and translate into the patient bed. And we also very early learned that we have to go back from the bed to the lab again. But that's, you can say, my background. I've been at Rigshospitalet as an överläkare also. And I've been working since 2000 with, you can say, in companies. So our first company, Topo Target, we had 2 products approved in oncology for cancer patients. Product number 2, I met Sten Knudsen, he's a statistician. He's a man who has been able to, you can say, convince me about how to do drug development in the future, using basically understanding that it's not a simple answer whether the product will work or not, or whether it would work or not. Sometimes we know exactly what drug type the patient should have, and still it's only working in 30% of those patients or 25% of those patients. So it's really about putting more, you can say, information into your decision. And that's what Sten Knudsen did all the way back to 2004. He started his company. He's a professor at Danish Technical University and built this system. And so he's worked on it for 15 years. Today, we also have, you can say, additional artificial intelligence, but the starting point is very important. So he came to us, and basically in 2009, when we were developing Belinostat in my previous company, he came and said who he think would benefit from this product. And he was right. And I basically worked with him since 2011 on his technology. And Oncology Venture is using, you could say, mathematics, looking at patients' tumors, and looking at how is this cancer patient's tumor operating, and what kind of accessibility, how is it sensitive, what kind of product matches this way the tumor goes. And the good thing is that it's really like yin and yang. Certain products are very good and another one is bad. So you have to find your way through. It's not like there is resistance to everything or that there is sensitivity to everything. It's really like antibiotics also, that we can identify the real thing. And that is giving us an opportunity to improve treatment outcomes of patients. So this is the company disclaimer, just jump on. So what you see, it was written here from BioStock, very precise, is that we are combining our DRP with products that we buy. So basically, we buy products that have been able to show activity in cancer patients. It's not products that work in mice or something like that. It's products that have demonstrated that this tumor in this patient's lung is shrinking. But they need, you can say, our help, or we can take that product to success by identifying who's actually going to be benefiting from it. You'll hear something about statistics here also. You'll also hear that when we go into Liptasis, our most, you can say, advanced product, we are taking 20% of the patients only to this product. So you think that this will reduce the market of your product. But just, if you think about one of the most successful products came out of Novartis called, or Roche, sorry, came out of Roche as Herceptin. And Herceptin is actually a very nice product for 20% of breast cancer patients. And it's one of the most successful one of the most successful oncology products they ever developed. So we're not worried about narrowing down to not treating everybody, but treating the patients that will benefit from our product. We are now out raising we're doing a rights issue, and we have 80% guaranteed in our rights issue of 100 million Swedish. So you can say our algorithms, what we work on is algorithms, and today we actually have the opportunity to add artificial intelligence. There's so much information in a patient's biopsies. We can read 20,000 genes. How these genes, it's a whole human genome we can read in one chip. How is this patient's tumor operating? What makes it sensitive? What makes it resistant? We're using typically 400 genes to identify the best match, and it works. This is a good story. So what we do is that we have, you can say, a system where we have a shorter, basically because we can identify responding patients, we have shorter lead times to our registration. We need basically to treat fewer patients. If you have a 40% response rate instead of a 12% response rate, statistically you can reach your goal faster. And we also see improved treatment outcomes. So this is you can say, the background of the company. And it's really like, you can say, classical drug development where we have the idea that we will treat them all. But today we have to take sort of personalized medicine into it, using our drug response prediction screening technology, looking at all those tumor variations and only treat the patients that are sensitive, that are susceptible to our product, and this gives us the high efficacy products. So we are looking at the patient's biopsy. We're going back to the core of the patient's tumor and identifying in the biopsy. This is a breast cancer patient, and these biopsies are being put into formalin and paraffin, and they're actually stored at the pathology department. We only need a couple of slices to be able to read how those patients, how they match with our products and who can benefit from our products. So what we've done is that we've basically gone out looking for products that matches our drug response prediction. Products where we can make those products commercially successful. In-license, getting, you can say, global rights to those products, develop them in-house, and then, of course, aiming to sell those products, aiming for partnering with those products. So we have now, you can say, we've looked at a range of cancer drugs out there. There's a lot of drugs out there. We have 7 drugs in license now where we have the global rights. Or one of them we only have the European rights. But it's huge opportunities. One of the big ones is Novartis' dovitinib. We got that this last spring. We signed on it. We've now looked at several hundred biopsies in those patients, and we can see that we can make this product successful. Novartis has been in 2,500 patients with this product. They probably invested $1 billion in this program. And I'm very proud that we could get the, you can say, opportunity to develop this product further. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But we have 2 products, Liplacis and dovitinib, really strong data, really important for, this is the whole idea of the company, is to develop those products. So you could say what we do is that we optimize drug development and we improve patient treatment outcomes. We're sourcing, you can call them competitively challenged products, but clinically successful. They work in patients. We just need to know who will have it. So it's not 1 in 10. It's enough if it's 3 in 10 or 4 in 10. Then if we have a successful product, but 1 in 10, you won't have it approved. We can unlock this by our DRP or unleash the value by this drug response prediction. We can do small targeted trials with a DRP when we select those patients. And of course, we have an opportunity for having the products approved also with smaller trials than usually. We had Belinostat in our previous company was approved with 130 patients. So it's kind of the same idea that we may be able to have those, if we have very good data, we can have our products approved with few patients. Selection for patients where the treatment is, where we're looking at the patient's genetic signature and we can have the highest likelihood of effective treatment. And then, of course, also avoiding treating patients that don't have any benefit, avoiding all the side effects of those toxic products if they don't work. And that is really also an important thing. And that gives us, of course, you can say, an efficient health economic program to have a higher probability of effective treatment and lower safety issues. Company, we are listed in First North in Stockholm. We have a market cap of 250 million Swedish. We are actually, you can say, it's a combination of Sten Knudsen's activities. It's almost like an IT company. It's really like software that he looks at those genes and what genes are important for sensitivity of the product. And then Oncology Venture is, we are drug developers. And now we have, you can say, a highly promising resource for Dovitinib, and we have the Liptasis positioned also for approval. I think these are the core informations here. We merged those two companies last August, and it makes a lot of sense. Very strong team. With me here, I have Ulla. Ulla is our Chief Operational Officer. She's also my wife. We worked together for 15 years in drug development. We have in a total team, we've got 33 patents and inventions. We've got 60 out-licensing deals. We've got successful trade sales and also 17 products launched. So this is a very big pharma experience, small pharma experience, biotech experience, but also regulatory experience. When we have a product, when we aim for approval, we have the product, but we also have to have our DRP approved. So it's the key to the use of the product. This is what we call companion diagnostic. It's companioning the product. A lot of companies do that right today, but I think we have an unusually high rate of success with Sten Knudsen's technology. This is a pipeline. It's actually 7 extremely interesting opportunities, and I'll just talk to you about the top 2. Dovitinib, this is the product we got from Novartis. They've been out developing this product in competition with several other products. There are 4 products out there that are similar, sorafenib and Sutent. There are products out there that sells approximately $1 billion annually. Novartis wants to be part of that, but they also want to take a product that has some specific advantages. So they were targeting a specific advantage with that product, which they didn't really, they were actually targeting a simple answer to use that product, but it's more complex. But it went, you could say it went apart. When it went to a phase 3 study, it was just as good as Bayer's sorafenib, which sells $1 billion. Just as good. That means that Novartis could have this product approved based on not being inferior to the competitors. Novartis does not want to have a product approved based on non-inferiority. They want to be superior. And therefore, we had this opportunity to take this product. And one of the good things is that they ran a lot of trials, but they also kept the biopsies, some of the samples from the tumor, and we have been able now to dig into those biopsies. And that means that all these 5 studies here, we've been able to dig in and see, is our technology able to pinpoint the patients that will have the most benefit from this product? And in all 5 cases, those biopsies, we've done the data mining. Those of you who have followed it have seen that we've done this data mining, and we announced here in February, I think, that we were successful, and basically 5 different cohorts of patients. Renal cancer, where they did the phase 3, liver cancer, breast cancer, lung, and endometrial. In all cases, we know who should have the product. So this is an opportunity to go. We aim for going to the FDA, having this approved based on what we have now, and understanding who should have the product. This is the goal. We don't even do a clinical trial, but so this is what I think has happened with our oncology venture since we started in 2015. We were aiming to get products in. The first product we had was a very old product, but very interesting, irofulven. These new products, we didn't anticipate we would get products from big pharma with this quality and where they kept the biopsies. So we can do our data mining. We can look at those biopsies and see, can we find these patients that would benefit from Dovitinib? And that's what we can do. So it's a very interesting opportunity that we've seen emerging. This was what we hoped for, but I also think it's almost better than we could hope for. Liptasis is the program that you probably have followed. This is a cisplatin product. Cisplatin is a very, very active cancer agent, but it's also quite toxic. So we've basically in-licensed a cisplatin with a liposome, so it's in a lipid bubble. So it's more targeted, goes a little more to the tumors and a little less to the other tissues. And then we have a response predictor on Liptasis, which is very important. And we now have, in our breast cancer patients, we have a 40% response rate when we include the top 20. Not all patients should be treated. We know that if we include, for instance, the middle 1/3, they don't get any benefit. We have to go for the best sort of opportunities also for our patients. Dovitinib, this is the Novartis compound. Here you see this is a scan of a patient who has a GIST tumor. And basically, you can see how much Dovitinib was able to reduce this tumor. And what we see here is normal kidney. We don't want to have that out. And this is a bladder and the heart. There is something that is tumor in the middle here, but it's just much better for this patient. So Dovitinib works, and we now know who should have this product. And this is a key component in our technology. So you say, what we can do is say, okay, we have the opportunity for expedited European and US approvals. We need to see excellent response rate. If we take, say, 12 patients and we don't have 3 or 4 of those patients benefiting, we don't do it anymore. So that's also why we can have so many products that we can do cost effective. But when it works, we should stick to it. And that gives us, you could say, pivotal trials with limited number of patients. And this is, pivotal means that we are aiming for approval. The whole thing is, of course, if we have an approval, you can sell your product. And the typical price for a modern approved product is $10,000 per month, and patients will benefit from that maybe in 6 months. So it's obvious that we can do screening and we can treat the likely responders, and this is where we are. So I talked to you about our, you could say, the 3 things we do. We in-license, and there are still products out there. I promise you there are a lot of products where our technology can work. We're in-licensing, getting global rights to phase 2, 3 oncology products. We do our own clinical development, and then the aim is to sell. We want to sell the program together with this companion diagnostic. And we now know that both the Liptasys and the Dovitinib, the Novartis compound, is mature enough to start a serious selling effort. And that's why we've now arranged, with the help from Destom Partners, they are sort of professional, it's an American company, a professional sales team, that they shall help us getting our first 2 products out. And there is, of course, many opportunities for how we can make business. It's out-license to pharma, it's sell the product outright, it's going into joint ventures. And we can also, for that matter, say that we would like to sell the product in Scandinavia to get the company growing. The revenues are sort of upfront payments, milestone payments, and royalties on such a program. I'm proud to see how we are able also in the scientific world to get this stuff endorsed. This is a publication we had here in April. And what it says is that it's in pharmacogenomics. It's kind of a magazine a journal who is focusing on drugs and genes. How does that link? And we come up with a drug response predictor to guide treatment for breast cancer. And what we also say is that knowing the target is only part of the solution. We also have to look at what is destroying the story. What are the resistance mechanisms in addition to the target? And we published this here in April. So we have a lot of data demonstrating that we are right, that we can actually do that. Sten Knudsen has worked on that since 2004. And I just want to show you how it looks in cisplatinum. So cisplatinum is a product that it's almost 50 years old. It cured patients with testicular cancer, those of you who remember how it came in. And it's also a core in treatment of a lot of childhood cancers. What we were able to demonstrate last year is that we could predict who benefited to this old product, very important product. But we have in-licensed a liposomal, a new formulation. So we have a protection on, you can say, how to use it. This is platinum. And here you see what is it that we can see in lung cancer. This is patients who have received cisplatinum after surgery. We know that when you go to surgery for lung cancer, there is, even if it looks very nice, there's a high risk there are tumor cells in the patient. Therefore, today we give those patients what we call adjuvant therapy. We give them chemotherapy after surgery. It's the same that happens with breast cancer patients. They also get surgery and then they get adjuvant chemotherapy. So these patients they're all getting cisplatinum, but we know they're not all benefiting. Some of them are benefiting, and we see that it's like 70% of those patients are surviving. But if we look at our DRP and we split it and say these patients, let's do the biopsies, and we can see, okay, our DRP can predict what is actually the value of your cisplatin for your patient. And then you see this. This is that if you're in the bottom 10, if you get this cisplatin after surgery and you're not sensitive to cisplatin, your risk of dying for the cancer is much higher. It's 60% instead of the 70% on the average. And now, of course, we can say we want to give those patients a better treatment, and those patients are getting an elegant, very good treatment. But we can see these things, and this is what the technology does, splitting the patients into who's going to benefit and who's not. And that's, of course, what we put into our breast cancer. We use this. And then we do a breast cancer study, taking the top 1/5 into treatment. We have our own formulation of Liptasys, and this is what we're aiming for now for submission to sort of having an approval hopefully on 150 patients or something like that. Because we now know that when we do the top 1/5 here, we have a 40% response rate with the patients. A lot of the patients benefit, but 40% meaning that the tumor shrinks to less than half size. So we're having a very clear picture of success. The last product that was approved for all comers, and this is what the other do, the last product that was approved for all comers with heavily pretreated metastatic breast cancer, Halloween, has a response rate of 12%. So we have 14% when we treat the right patients. And this is, of course, how we want to have this product approved. This is what we're aiming for. So what we see is, it should say Dovitinib here, but what we say is that we are now seeing that we can use the Dovitinib, and we can go for an approval based on the non-inferiority information we have already and our response prediction that will add on what Novartis were able to do. And then we have our LiptoSys program that we will start. And the other things is running in parallel, of course, but those things are the most important things that we see in the future. Some of you may have followed that we just got Exempra in. This is an interesting, again, a development. This product is approved for breast cancer in the US. It's not approved in Europe. It's an American product. Maybe the Europeans didn't like it as much as the Americans. It's not approved in Europe. But we have a DRP, and that means we can take, and you could say the EMA, they says we don't think the cost benefit is the ratio is okay, but with our DRP we believe we can make this approvable in Europe also. It's approved already. It's sold in America. We want to find the European women who will also benefit from this product. So we are doing now a rights issue, and basically, if you have 2 shares, this is a unit, and the unit gives you a right to buy a new share for 4 kroner, but it also gives you a warrant of 7.5 kroner. So exercise price for the new share is 4 kroner, but you're also getting a warrant of 7.5 kroner with a service period of 12 months, where we have, you can say, windows for exercising the warrant, first week of June, September 19, December 19, and June 2020. Subscription period ends here on May 2nd. We are aiming for 100 million Swedish, and we have, you can say, we have rights issues of 80% of that in-house. So that's the background. We have put out some little pamphlet on the company. Actually, I think it's worthwhile reading. It's well formulated. Ulla, thank you. So, thank you.
Thank you, running on overdrive here. We have time for a couple of questions before the break. I was going to ask you, since the fact that you in-license or you in-license products from sometimes big companies like Novartis, for example.
Yes.
And then you have your companion diagnostics to make sure that you can find the right patients for these drugs. And the business strategy is to sell or to out-license again. What's the probability that the taker of the project will be the same company that you actually got the drug from?
It's a good question. I think it depends. I think Novartis they have moved further ahead. I think from a Novartis compound, I think what we are excited about is that we can identify the patients that benefit. They've been probably 300 people working on this program for 9-8 years, and we can with this technology. So what I think there is, maybe they don't take our product back, but they certainly see what we can do. The other thing is that this type of product is also a new opportunity in immuno-oncology. So I think there is a double, you can say, support for that product. Just after we got the Novartis compound, Eisai and Merck announced a deal to $5.8 billion, where Eisai's compound, which is very much like Dovitinib, the same mechanism of action, gave wonderful data together with immuno-oncology in renal cancer, where we are also strong. So it's really an opportunity. And if you look at the immuno-oncology compound side, like what you call PD-1, PD-L1, there are 50 products in development. They all need to do something better than the 2 winners that are Opdivo and Keytruda. They need to do something for delineating. And our DRP can give this opportunity. So this is where we see the compound. I don't think that Novartis, they haven't got what we call rights of first refusal or something like that. But that's also part of the deal. Sometimes we have a product where the product owner wants to have an opportunity to buy back, but it's going to be on market conditions. So it's also nice when there is this buyback option. So I think that it depends on the company type, on where the company is. Novartis is extremely successful with a new approach of CAR T cells and things like that, so they may not be going back, but there's a lot of other opportunities.
And then running as many projects in the same time as you do in parallel, that should call for a certain burn rate.
Yes.
And
yes.
now you're.
So that's why we raise money.
Yeah, I guess.
But I say that it does give us a burn rate, but you also have to think about that we do talk about a company with a market cap of 200-300 right now after we announced the rights issue. And we are looking at compounds that are, as I say, extremely valuable if we can create the product we started. And that has also been explained why it took so long time, because we had to start from scratch. We had to get irofulven manufactured in the US. It took us 3 years before we had the first patient treated with prostate cancer here in October last year. But of course, you can say, if we say 12 patients treated with our DRP in prostate cancer, we know already there is a 10% response rate in prostate cancer. If we cannot get good results in 12 patients, we are not developing this anymore. So of course, it has been expensive to manufacture irofulven, but the new products where we're getting, with dovitinib, we've got 1,900 kilos of dovitinib. They were ready to launch this to the market. It's an amazingly high, if some of you need some dovitinib, don't hesitate to call me. We have buckets and we are ready to move it forward. But it's obvious, it's stable. We are of course keeping it so that we can use it also for the launch. But most of it is that basically some of the stuff we're doing, most of it is in breast cancer. We've screened 1,500 Danish breast cancer patients, and we're working with the Danish breast cancer cooperative group. Basically, that when a patient has a relapse, they can see whether there is a match with one of our products. And that means that we can treat patients, you can say, quite cost effective, and also run away. If our Exempra, the new product, if we're not able to see good results in 12 patients that it actually works, we will not go further with it. So it's really about getting, you can say, smoke in the chimney, treating the patients and see that it works. We have 2 good successes now. I look forward to see our irofulven. We are on track with that in prostate cancer.
And a final question, because we don't have much time left. Speaking again, I'm back with the burn rate here. So the financing that you do now, would you predict that the capital will be enough until you can see some revenue?
Yes, I will predict that. I promised you a deal in last year. I have to be very careful with deals. I see that we have very mature products now, and I think that the fact that we are working with a professional sales team should give us an opportunity to have a deal this year. I have to be very careful with promising that. I see that we are getting better data, and as long as you are supporting us, we will be successful because it works. I think you can say what we're here is that the money we are raising now gives us cash for this year. It's obvious also that when you look at the warrants, if the warrant system, if you are buying the warrants and you do that because the share price is above 7.5 krona at that time point, it gives us an additional 180 million. So that's a lot of runway for us that we're coming out with now.
All you need to do is deliver results.
Yes, and I'll do my best.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Peter. If anyone has questions for Peter, you can approach him in the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we are actually going to have a short break now again, and this is why, so that you don't get tired in your eyes and ears. We'll be back here at 12:30. See you then.
I have met you before, Pepe, but yeah, good to have a face finally because we've talked a lot on on the emails.
Yeah. We met Jonas and Hannah.
Yeah, they were visiting you in
So, welcome back everybody from another break. We are ready for the final stretch of today's program. We are going to be listening to presentation from two more companies, both in the field of oncology. And next up is the company Rovac, and I'm happy to present Anders. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. As mentioned, my name is Anders Ljungqvist. I'm a pharmacist by training, and I spent more than 35 years in drug development in big pharmaceutical companies, but also in biotech companies at different sizes. Today, I'm the CEO at Rovac, a Swedish biotech company, also with a subsidiary in Denmark. Rovac is a company working with immune therapy, and specifically, we are working with a treatment that should hopefully be able to avoid metastasis. So we're working with activities to avoid the spread of cancer in the body. We are listed on the stock exchange here in Sweden, and for this reason, this safe harbor statement. So, if we go into further about the project that we are working with, and it's a T-cell activation mechanism that we are working with. So we are using the T-cells in the body's defense system, the immune system, and to activate these T-cells to be able to attack cancer cells, we have to provide a target for the T-cells to recognize. And the target that we are working with is a protein that is called Rho-C. This protein is special because in all cancer cells that has a metastatic potential, you will see that the Rho-C is overexpressed, meaning you will find it in high concentrations. Not only in one disease, but the overexpression of Rho-C is common for all cancer cells that are metastasizing. So potentially, the treatment can be used in a variety of different indications. So, what are we working with for the next 3 years? What's the frame that we are working within? And that's a little bit what I want to describe for you over the next couple of minutes. So, as mentioned, we're working with a immune product, and we're working to avoid metastasis, to avoid the spread of the disease. Now, this is an approach that we find extremely relevant, because the fact is that 9 out of 10 cancer patients died of metastasis. They don't die of the primary tumor. So if we can avoid the spread of the cancer, we have a very good possibility to provide the patients with a better quality of life and a better prognosis. We have chosen to start working in prostate cancer, and the labeling for a potential product coming out of this is this one: adjuvant treatment of prostate cancer patient with biochemical failure following definitive local therapy. And I'll come back to what that actually covers, that labeling. Currently, we have completed our first clinical trial, a phase 1/2 trial also in prostate cancer patients. And we have initiated a clinical phase 2b trial. We have submitted the clinical trial application in the first of probably 8 countries. The first countries where it has been submitted is in Denmark. So the phase 2b clinical phase have already started. Then you can say, is there actually a patient population for this treatment? And yes, there is, as we see it. More than 1 million patients are diagnosed with localized prostate cancer. There are much more patients, far more patients that are diagnosed with prostate cancer. But localized prostate cancer, there is about 1 million patients per year diagnosed in Europe and in US. And the statistic tells us that about 40% of these patients will metastasize. So we can avoid this metastasis and keep the patients in the localized stage. There is a very big benefit for the patients. Finally, what we're also working with right now is trying to develop a protocol for a different indication, a late-stage indication where we want to look at combination therapy with a different product, and most likely this will be what is called a checkpoint inhibitor. So this is the frame that we are working with for the next 3 years. And here I just listed what will happen. Right now we have completed everything that was completed during 2017-18, and that led up to the completion of the first clinical trial. Going forward, we have completed the scientific advice with EMA with a very positive outcome. This was done late last year, or mid last year it was completed. And we last week could publish information that we have also completed our pre-IND meeting with the FDA, and again with very positive results. The CTA submission, as I mentioned, has gone in the first country, and we will progress with the remaining countries over the summer. Then I've written we have a PIP, that's a pediatric investigation plans. You can say that it may not be that relevant when it's prostate cancer, but as we are maybe able to get into other indications, it's very important that we have a plan agreed with EMA. Otherwise, they could jeopardize the regulatory development of this project. Mid this year, sorry about that. Mid this year, we will start the phase 2b trial. Expect to have the first patient in July. We also hope to perform some late-stage CMC development, that is to prepare for future commercialization. As mentioned, we would also like to start an explorative clinical trial in a different indication in combination therapy, and I hope to start that sometime in 2020. And completion of the main study in prostate cancer, we expect to have the results of the effect data in quarter 3 to quarter 4 2021. In parallel with this activity that is directly related to the regulatory and clinical development of the project, we have an ongoing collaboration with the University of Tübingen, experts in immune oncology, experts in immune measurement, and also with the Center for Cancer Immune Therapy in Copenhagen. And finally, but not least, we have a collaboration with Lund University on cancer stem cells, and we hope to be able to publish the first information from that collaboration within the next 2 months. So, the team, I shortly presented myself, and also we have Henrik, who is our CFO. Henrik has a long experience within biotech and worked with other areas before that. Lately, he was the CFO of Santaris Pharma. He was also the CEO for some time. This was successfully then sold to Roche in 2014, a very good deal. So Henrik had been involved in a number of international deals within biotech over the years. Also now we have engaged Anders Månsson, who's actually sitting here today also, and you can contact in the break. Responsibility for the business development and also for communication. Anders have indeed a long career at different big pharma companies, Ferring and Leo, but has also worked lately with a number of Swedish biotech companies and also as a consultant. Has made a number of very interesting deals, both out-licensing and in-licensing. So we're happy to have Anders with us in the team. As you can understand from the activities that are prioritized before, we basically focus in Rovac on clinical and regulatory development. And the team that is working specifically for us on this is the following 4 persons: Stephen Glaser, who is medical director, very long experience with different companies, with Novo in Denmark for more than 10 years. Have also worked with some American companies, have also worked with medical devices. In Sweden, he's worked with BioInvent, he's worked with Hansa Medical, the Biopharma I think it's called now, and is also on the board of Immunicum. Very experienced person from a strategic point of view. Marlene is our clinical coordinator, more than 20 years experience in clinical development. She worked as executive and also worked on the more operational level. In addition, Malene has worked with cancer vaccines before, which obviously is an advantage for us. Ann-Christine is responsible for the regulatory development. Also, Ann-Christine has a long-standing career, first at Leo Pharma. Then she moved to Belgium and was responsible for UCB regulatory affairs. She established Shionogi's European Regulatory Office. And in the biotech area, she was responsible for Genmab's regulatory development for a number of years. Finally, but not least, Andrew, who is our biostatistician. He has 20 years background from AstraZeneca, focusing on phase 1 and phase 2 oncology development. He's written a number of publications, and he's a invited speaker both at different conferences but also at different authorities, a very experienced person. So, as mentioned, we started with prostate cancer. That's where we want to continue. Now, if we look at the disease progression, when the disease is diagnosed, most of the patients will be treated with either prostatectomy or radiotherapy. And once that is done, they will get no treatment. You will see the PSA drops to below measurable level. In this stage, here they are under active surveillance monitoring, but they don't get any treatment. As mentioned before, a number of these patients will experience PSA recurrence, and at that time, you measure the PSA doubling time to determine how aggressive is the PSA. At one stage, then, the clinicians will decide to move the patient into second-line treatment, which is androgen deprivation therapy for most of the patient. Effective, some side effects, but the backside of it is that after about 18 to 24 months, the patients will be resistant to treatment. They will no longer have any effect. And at this time, then, they will move into metastatic phase, and finally, at this end, you have bone metastasis and spread to the rest of the body, and where the treatment options are not that many. Where we are looking, it's in this area here. It's the area where the patients today are under active surveillance. And in the clinical trial, we are enrolling the patient at this point when we know that they get a PSA increase. That's where they get into the clinical trial. This just to show that currently active surveillance and watchful waiting is the only thing that happens for this group of patients. And if we look at the pipeline, basically there are no other products in development specifically in this phase of disease development. So we completed the first phase 1-2 trial with good results, safety, no grade 3-4 or toxicity, which is very good, and we have a very good tolerability, no withdrawals due to treatment or due to safety. The only thing seen is a grade 2 or less than grade 2 reaction, skin reactions at the injection site. This is expected because you always use an adjuvant when you use a vaccine, and this adjuvant creates this irritation in the skin. So that's an indication that it works. So the safety and tolerability for the patients is very good here. In this first study, we also measured the immunological response. And what we did was that we took one sample before treatment, 2 samples during treatment, and 1 sample 1 month after the treatment has been completed. 18 out of 21 patients have significant response. One patient we had to remove from this evaluation because the results were not inclusive. The patient had already immunological response before that he was treated. So 18 of the 21 patients have a significant response, But in addition, they also have what we call confirmed immune responders. And to be that, they had to have 2 of these 3 measurements had to be positive. And all of the 18 patients are regarded as confirmed immune responders. So it's a very strong, significant, and robust immune response. From these patients, we also have follow-up data after 3 months and after 6 months after completion of treatment. And all patients are still significant immune responders. So that means that we can conclude that we have a product-mediated immune response. So we have created this immune response with the product that we have administered to the patient. And the other thing we can say that with the dose, we know that it's biologically active. What we cannot say with this first small study is that if it's clinical relevant activity, because the study is far too small to judge that. That we will have to judge with the next clinical trial. Did I get that here? Yeah. So the next trial that we will go, it's a placebo-controlled study, and that is in men that the PSA have come back, PSA failure, biochemical failure, that have completed definitive local therapy, which means radiation therapy or prostatectomy. We have to enroll 150 patients, and we will compensate with some dropouts, so it will be 175 patients. It will be, as I mentioned, in 7 to 8 countries, and we will have 35 clinical sites for this study. So it's a relatively big study. From the first patient in until we can conclude on efficacy, it will take 24 months, which is actually a very quick in this patient population. We will follow the patients after the 24 months for an additional 12 months, but completion and conclusion on efficacy can be done after 22 months. The primary objective is to see, and we measure the PSA doubling time to see whether we can reduce the progress in patients that are actively treated compared with placebo. And we can also have a definition here. We have a definition that if we can delay the time needed for a second-line treatment, which is ADT. So that's the study we would like to start. And just to tell you here that the regulatory development, we are on track. We are on track here in that we completed the regulatory development in Europe. And with the results that came out last week, we also completed the pre-IND meeting, and what we'll now consider if we want to open an IND in US and include some clinical sites in US also. We have not yet decided on that. So this is the picture that I showed before. So this is what we are working with, and this is what we hope to achieve over the next 3 years. You could see earlier today that we issued a press release that we are going for a right issue. And this right issue is on approximately 181 million Swedish kronor. And this issue have been secured through subscription commitments and issue guarantees. The subscription period will be from 5th of June to the 19th of June. And the ratio compared to existing shares will be 1-to-1. Subscription price will be 19 Swedish kronor per share. So with this, I think I've used a little bit more than I could on my time, but that's where we are.
Thank you, Anders.
Thank you.
So yeah, big news today out. Rights issue of almost 181 million Swedish kronor. How far will that money get you?
That will take us 3 years ahead. That will cover all the planned activity over the 3 years, meaning that we will be able to complete the phase 2b clinical trial that I mentioned, and also that we will be able to conduct a second explorative study in a combination study in a different indication. That's what that will cover.
Okay. Would that be including if you decide to open up sites in the US as well?
We have to calculate that. I think we can cover 1 or 2 sites in US, but we have to look at it in detail before we can confirm if it's doable or not. And we have to also conclude whether it's a good idea. I mean, are there any difference from what the European authorities will approve on the protocol compared to what the FDA is saying? If they're not close enough, it will be too difficult. But if they are very close, we could consider opening 1 or 2 sites in US.
And you mentioned that you had news out last week about your last meeting with the FDA in the US. What can you tell us? Anything about that?
Well, the conclusion is that it's a pre-IND meeting, which is very much the same as a scientific advice procedure that we had with EMA. So you ask the agency's opinion on the product, the documentation, preclinical documentation, for example, and you ask the agency's opinion about the patient population, the endpoints, and so on. And they actually answered positively on all 18 points. There were nothing that they said you need to do this or you need to do this. Okay. So that's very positive. They did come with some recommendation that what we could do that would be a good idea to consider. But there is no showstoppers as such in what they have said. We don't need to have any additional preclinical data. We can go with the protocol as it looks right now, and we don't have to have any additional CMC data, meaning on the physical product. So it's a good result, very good result.
So provided that you get the shareholders okay at the extra general meeting in the 29th of May, you're good to go then.
We are, and that means that we will have no delays in continuing the development of the project. Yes.
And the rights issue, like you said, it's guaranteed to 100%, and you also have a couple of quite big investors coming in there. And as I understand it, there are long-term investors.
Yes.
Is there anything you can share about that?
Well, I think both investors of the big ones, the Nordic Cross and the M2 Management Asset Management, are pretty known in Sweden, and they are long-term investors. They invest a considerable sum of money. They feel that the project is very interesting, and they are aware that part of this documentation takes some time to compile. So they're very positive in relation to the development plans that we have come up with, and very interesting to stay with the company.
Okay. We are actually going to have to go forward in the program. If anyone has questions for Anders, you will be welcome to take them after we are finished. You will stay for a while?
I will stay, yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Anders.
Thank you very much.
So we are actually ready for our final speaker here today. It's not the final item of the program, but the next speaker is Per Norler of Alligator Bioscience. Welcome, Per.
Thank you. Right. Let's see if we can get the first slide. Is it me?
There's another company, I think.
Yeah. Thanks. So, Alligator. We're a public biotech company developing therapeutic antibodies activating the patient's own immune system against cancer. Basically, that means that we do the same thing as everyone else. We are today more than 100 biotech companies developing immuno-oncology antibodies. There is one key difference, though. All our products are developed to induce a strong immune activation in the tumor area, but not elsewhere in the body. And this is a concept called tumor-directed immunotherapy. The whole point, of course, is to focus the immune attack towards the tumors, to increase efficacy, and to reduce systemic side effects, to improve tolerability. And this concept has been pioneered by Alligator. We today have 5 products in our pipeline in preclinical and clinical stage, all with a first-in-class potential. The business model is to develop those products from ID up to clinical phase 2, followed by out-licensing to pharma. And this is something we share with most other biotech companies as well. There is one difference again, we have already delivered with a great out-licensing deal with Johnson & Johnson. It's a deal worth, let's see here, $695 million, and I'll come back to that deal. Based on that deal and a successful share issue at the IPO, we are very well financed today with money in the bank for more than 2 years. I will start by going through the 2 clinical assets of Alligator. ATOR-1015, sorry. We have ADC-1013 and we have ATOR-1015. ADC-1013 is a CD40 agonist antibody, and that's the one which is out-licensed to Johnson & Johnson. And I will also talk about ATOR-1015, our clinical bispecific CTLA-4 product. Here is out-licensing deal with Johnson & Johnson. We have received the upfront payment, $35 million, and 2 of the milestone payments, $5 and $6 million. So that's $46 million, plus they've invested $15 million in Alligator. So more than $60 million. The next milestone will be phase 2 milestones, and we expect to get the first phase 2 milestone the next year. What's significant about the deal, it is quite front-loaded. More than $350 million in development and registration milestones, and the rest is sales-based milestones. On top of that, of course, the really big upside is royalties in the range of 10% on all future sales. And I would say Johnson & Johnson or Janssen Biotech, they take all cost for clinical development of this product and every cost for this product, which is really nice of them. So we have now completed 2 clinical trials, one run by Alligator. It was intratumoral administration of the product, and we could demonstrate that that route of administration was safe. Then in October 2016, Johnson & Johnson started a next clinical trial. This is an intravenous clinical dose escalation trial, and as you can see, it's a very large trial with 2 dose escalation arms. More than 95 patients has been enrolled in this study to date, and the results will be presented at ASCO in about a month from today. So we will come back with data from that trial. But it's a safety trial. We should remember it's a safety trial. And again, Janssen, they take all clinical development of this product, and that means we can focus all our efforts on the next important asset, which is ATOR-1015. This is a bispecific antibody, and here we are first in the world with a new concept, a tumor localizing CTLA-4 product. It's been generated by fusing 2 different immuno-oncology antibodies, immuno-oncology activators. One is an OX40 antibody and the other a CTLA-4 blocker. And what this product can do is activate the most important weapon of the immune system, the T effector cells, and at the same time, it can suppress the brakes of the immune system, the regulatory cells. So essentially what we do is both stepping on the gas and releasing on the brakes with the same product. It's a great potential for superior efficacy. In fact, our ambition is not only to do the same thing as those 2 compounds in combination, but to be better. So how can we be better than the combination? Well, because they are in the same product. They can activate both pathways, but in addition, they can form a physical bridge between the immune cell, increasing cell-to-cell communication. And that will lead to increased immune activation. Here's a clear example. We can see a very strong increase in cell-to-cell crosstalk. You can compare the effect of ATOR-1015 with the combination of OX40 plus CTLA-4. But the important question is, does this make a difference? And in fact, the results surprised even us. Here is the most important mechanism of action, depleting the regulatory cells. The blue line is a combination of OX40 and CTLA-4 products given at the same time at increasing doses. This is the maximum effect. ATOR-1015 is 3 to 4 times stronger in activity. and it translates to anti-tumor efficacy. Here is a tumor model, bladder cancer. We cure around 60% in this model. And that's impressive data. But the most important fact is that once they're cured, they become immune to the cancer. So if we keep these survivors, no further treatment, we save them for a few months, then they will be immune to the cancer. And here we did another experiment where we kept them, the survivors, for 2 months without any more therapy, and then where they got back 2 different cancers. A lung cancer and the same, the bladder cancer. The lung cancer, the immune system does not recognize. It hasn't been exposed to it before, and it will grow very quickly, as you can see. The bladder cancer is immediately recognized. Sorry. There you go. And it won't grow at all. The mice are completely resistant and immune to the tumor. A tumor-specific immunity, and it's long-standing. The obvious question is, does this translate to patients? Usually those models don't. But here I can tell you without a flicker in the eye, it clearly does. CTLA-4 is well known and clinically validated as a monotherapy and as combination therapy with PD-1 in melanoma, in renal cell cancer, in colorectal cell cancer. And that's also why Jim Allison got the Nobel Prize late last year. Here is a recent example. This is a combination of a PD-1 blocker, Opdivo, with the CTLA-4 product Yervoy. And as you can see, they clearly outperform standard chemotherapy in lung cancer. This is on progression-free survival. This does not translate into a great market potential, though. If you look at the marketing of the products today, these are sales from 2018 and then prognosis going forward. And the red box is CTLA-4 product Yervoy. It was approved already 2011. Still the sales, they are reasonably good, $1.3 billion, but they don't really increase. What is increasing and what is really, really great, that's PD-1 sales. From today, about $16 billion, expected to about $40 billion in a few years. So why the difference? Both are effective cancer immunotherapies. And the simple answer is CTLA-4 is very toxic. If you take a look at the last trial I showed you, lung cancer trial, that's the most recent trial. They have reduced the dose of CTLA-4 quite a lot. Still, it is really toxic. By PD-1 itself, about 8% of the patients get serious adverse events. But if you combine with CTLA-4, it's more than twice as many. And as you can see, more than chemotherapy. And that can make a great difference to patients, whether they can handle the treatment or not. So who in his right mind would develop a stronger CTLA-4 product given this toxicity? Well, the reason is we have found a very beautiful solution to the problem. A tumor localizing CTLA-4 product. Here is one example where we looked at immune activation within the tumors in this tumor model. This is a bladder cancer model. Again, if we look at the immune activation, if you don't treat, there is very low activation, but you can increase activity of the effector T cells and reduce regulatory cells by +40 and by CTLA-4. And again, 1015 outperforms those really a lot. If we look at other parts of the immune system, and this is an important thing, there is no effect. So the effect seems to be confined to the tumor area. We can get a very strong effect in the tumor, but not elsewhere in the body. And this is exactly what we need. Strong CTLA-4 activation without the toxicity. So the case is quite simple. CTLA-4 is efficacious, but very poor tolerability. And we know that CTLA-4 and PD-1 is the best combination out there. But PD-1 will actually increase toxicity even further. And despite the toxicity, the combination is in fact approved already in melanoma, renal cell cancer, and colorectal cancer. So the business case for Alligator is to become the preferred regimen in combination with PD-1 in those indications and hopefully in more indications where the combination is effective by improving safety and efficacy. We have a strong preclinical support, and we actually have today a phase 1 trial that's already started, and that will give the answers to those questions. Is the concept really valid in clinical in patients? That trial has been started. We have dosed the first few patients, and we will have a clinical safety readout in the second half of 2020. And at that time, we will also start phase 2 trials in combination with PD-1. We will start with melanoma, where the effect is the highest, and then we will expand also to renal cell and colorectal cancer. First efficacy readout in 2022. The deal space, just a very short comment. There's a lot of deals made right now. Some of them, and many of them, has been within immuno-oncology. Here's Gilead Agenus deal, 4-1BB programs, 3 programs, US$ 150 million upfront, total deal value of 1.7, but it's 3 products we should remember. Amgen Molecular Partners, a bispecific product, 50 million upfront, 550 million in total deal value. Genentech, a bispecific again, about 100 million upfront, not much more communicated, but that includes near-term milestones. And then very recently a CTLA-4 deal. It could look a bit small, 20 million upfront and 250 million in total deal value, but it's a regional Chinese deal. So there's a great potential for making deals in this space right now. Financials, very short. We don't really have excellent sales. We don't have sales at all. What we do is we have a great liquidity. We have about $43 million in the bank that will take us more than 2 years ahead. Ownership, no changes. So I will just finish by summarizing 1013. We are at the front. We have a strong partner, and we think we have a best-in-class profile within CD40. 1015, we are first in the world with a new concept, a tumor-localizing bispecific CTLA-4, now in clinical phase 1. And then we have 2 4-1BB products, where 1017 will actually enter clinical phase 1 very soon. Let's look at the next important milestones. We have the big milestones next year. Clinical readout on 1015, that's safety readout, second half 2020. And we also expect phase 2 milestones next year with 1013. But this year, and actually this summer, we will submit clinical trial authorization for 1017, the 4-1BB monospecific antibody, and at the end of the year for the bispecific 4-1BB product 527. So with that, Alligator is building a solid clinical pipeline within our niche of immunotherapy, tumor-directed immunotherapy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Per. I think it's refreshing that you acknowledge that there are room for improvement in the sales section.
Sure.
But then again, you do have a really, like you said, you have a very interesting development program going on here. And looking forward to another milestone next year. That should be nice. I was actually going to ask you about the new platform, the technology platform that you have launched recently.
Sure.
The Ruby platform. What can you tell us about that in brief?
Yeah, so Ruby is a bispecific platform, bispecific format, and essentially that's a way to fuse 2 different therapeutic antibodies into one product with superior properties. And the difference between the existing formats is we can have a shorter development timelines with this product, and the end quality of the product will be better.
I understand the part of the quality being better. That's important, of course. What are the other, what are the biggest advantages of this platform?
Yeah, I think the development timelines is really important. I mean, for us, trying to be first in class is always competition between a lot of other companies, and developing a bispecific is extremely challenging. What it does specifically, this format, it allows us, if we have 2 original antibodies with good properties. We can fuse them without secondary optimization. If you don't have that, you need to spend 12 to 18 or 24 months to improve the final product. But we can go straight into manufacturing once we fuse them.
Okay, and given the, like you said, the huge, the fierce competition in this field, I bet there are a few big players out there who are really interested in cutting times to development.
Absolutely.
Have you seen any interest?
We have a lot of discussions with companies on our format. We are not planning on out-licensing the format, but we have today a full platform for generating biologics. We have a human antibody library, we have the protein evolution technology, we have manufacturing and the bispecific format. So we are discussing different collaboration.
Okay. This is speculative, but if you had been, instead of being a Swedish company based in Lund at Medical Village, if you had been based in Boston, for example, where would you have been now with the technology that you have?
Well, that's quite difficult to answer, but I mean, surely where you are makes a difference. But I think Lund, where we are positioned, has been a really good place to be. There's a lot of access to old AstraZeneca competencies, and it's a vibrant area to work in. So I think we're in a good location.
Yeah. And then speaking of locations, you started out at least to made an appearance on the Swedish biotech scene for the broad masses, I guess, with your deal with Janssen in 2015. Given the development in this field during the last 4 years, how do you think your deal then compared to what you could have done now? Because I bet it's a bit harder now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the deal is still a great deal, and it would be great if we did it today. Surely it has changed within immunotherapy. In 2015, most pharmas were building their pipelines. Today, they have really strong pipelines within immuno-oncology, and I would say there is around 1,000 or 2,000 products today, depending on how you define immuno-oncology, that are claimed to be immuno-oncology agents. So the competition is really strong. So for us, it's all about being first or being different, or better.
Great. We're actually going to talk more about deal making in a little while. I was going to see if there are any questions from the audience to Per at this point. One question.
How do you see the collaboration with Janssen? Are they moving forward quickly enough? I've seen in some other respects that they have been too cautious and others have outrun them.
Yeah. No, that's a fair question, and there's a few things we should remember. If you just look at it on the surface, this trial has taken a very long time, but we should remember they did start the trial in October 2016. When they made the deal, we were running an intratumoral study, and then they were preparing for the intravenous trial. So in October 2016, and the trial was then completed early this year, so a bit more than 2 years. And it's a very large phase 1 trial with dual dose escalation arms. And in addition, which also took some time, is they have changed manufacturer from our Swedish manufacturer. They have moved to their US preferred provider, Biogen, and then set up a more or less almost commercial size manufacturing for this product. So they've introduced the new material into the trial, and that's added more patients and added more time. So there's a lot of factors, but obviously we would have hoped for even faster progress there.
I hope that we will be able to hear a little bit more about your collaboration with Janssen in the upcoming panel discussion. So for now, thank you very much. Feel free to hang still here, and we'll actually introduce then another panel contestant. I was going to say it's not a competition, but please welcome David Baker from Affibody.
Tack. Thank you.
Yes. So, David or David, you're here today because your company, Affibody, made a deal recently, basically. What can you tell us about that?
So it's not in the area of oncology. I'm from a company called Affibody, and we work broadly in autoimmune and inflammatory diseases. So this is a deal focusing on rare IgG-mediated diseases, and we did that collaboration with Alexion. Alexion is a big biotech coming out of the US that has strong interest in those types of rare immunological and autoimmune diseases.
And the deal had an upfront of $25 million US.
Yep.
And total potential deal value of 625. So this is actually one of the bigger deals for a Swedish biotech in recent years. Were there several bidders involved to get this to this point?
Yeah, so this is, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I kind of like business development and how it fits, with the strategy of the company. And the numbers are good, and they're one thing. And the partner is important to find out. And there's also other aspects of this deal. So, I mean, to us, when going out and starting initiating discussion around the compound, we said quite early on that we want to have a pretty active part in the development of this asset going forward. We see this asset as a good asset to build a company on, basically. So yes, there were, it was a process, if I put it like that, and we were out starting to initiate discussions with a host of different companies 3-4 years ahead of us signing a collaboration on it. So
that's really. How many companies were you talking to at that point?
So I mean, I think we have at least. If I count kind of early presentation, we have at least presented this to 50 plus potential partners.
And at what point were you able to sort of narrow the list down?
So I mean, I think that the list to some extent kind of narrowed itself down when we were really firm about what we wanted to have out of the deal, the strategic element, including the co-development, co-promotion, and so on. And that kind of narrowed down the list in a good way. And then we could focusing on kind of looking at the strengths of different partners and the strengths of the different terms that they were offering.
And Per, you mentioned not too long ago that the Alligator Bioscience, you made a deal with Janssen in 2015 about the same deal size. You mentioned also that you have a front-loaded deal structure in that aspect. Would you say that you are happy with those terms? Were there any other bidders involved in that process?
Yeah, we had a number of interactions. I would say Johnson & Johnson stood out both being the most, I would say, into the field with CD40. They had carried the leading CD40 experts at that time. They also had a very good clinical development plan. And then they had the best offer, but we did get other offers as well. It was a bit of an auction process. Maybe we could have got even better if we had two similar sized offers at the same time, but it was a reasonably good process, I would say.
Reasonably good, yeah. So the difference here then between the two deals that you have made, Janssen, they actually took over the development of your product, and
Sure.
David, in your case, you have a co-development deal going forward. What does that imply for you?
So I mean, I think the important thing it implies, and what we publicly stated, is that we're developing the asset in one indication that is an Affibody indication, so to speak, that we will continue our development in that. And we also have this US co-promotion right. So when I said earlier that this is a kind of a deal you can build a company on, the idea is, of course, us setting a flagpole down saying, we want to be a commercial company. We see US as our first commercialization market. Of course, knock on wood that this drug develops the way we hope it will.
And you both have stricken license deals at different stages, or actually it was the same stage. It was preclinical stage for both assets. Is that correct?
Well, 1013 was in early clinical phase 1. We had
Early
those
clinic.
3 patients.
And same for us. So a couple of patients.
Okay.
So it's a
Okay.
very similar stage.
Yeah. What are the strategic aspects of striking a deal in that particular phase? Because
So it's not super ideal.
No?
I mean, just generally speaking, doing a deal in the midst of a study is, I mean, I would advise against that, normally speaking, because there's so many unknowns. Things can go great or bad, or anything could happen. But it was just the way things panned out in our case.
Yeah. I think for us, it turned out very well, the fact that during the negotiations, we actually started to dose the first patient, and that put a lot of pressure on Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah. They felt they had to need to get into the race then. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to Per's point, I think that's the exact benefit, and what we've also been trying to convey is, I mean, this is a drug we're developing on our own. We are committed to continuing doing stuff with it. So that's, I think, what.
So you were not. You did not have the approach that you were out to license specifically.
No, we were out to find a partner to make the drug a better success, if I put it differently. Yeah.
Okay. Were the initial steps in your respective cases here? Were the initial steps taken in a business development context or in a partnering context, like in a partnering conference, or was it more on a scientific level? If you catch my drift.
Yeah. You generally work on all levels when it comes to out licensing. So, as David mentioned, you work with those partners for years before. We meet them all the time, creating credibility, showing we are a serious player who will stay on for years and years and develop quality products. And then once we are at the stage where we have something to sell, they will take us seriously. But it's a business development forums like JP Morgan's, BIOS, and all those partnering meetings, and it's of course attending all the scientific meetings.
Yeah, I tend to agree the same. I mean, the important thing is to kind of start out doing your target list and try out. Sometimes you don't know if your target list is right either. So it's good to start, having a bit of different ideas on who would be potentially interested, and start picking and see what happens when you start there. And it's on all levels, as Per is saying. It's both business development conferences, scientific conferences, and just, calling people.
Yeah. So, David, at what point in time did you get indications that Alexion were really interested in that you felt that this is really going to happen?
So, I mean, I think that's hard to say. So we did get that feeling pretty early on, not only from them, but from others as well. So I think our internal decision was basically, when is the right time for us? What do we want to have achieved? Where do we think we can maximize what we want to get out of it? So it was more a question of making sure we have a lot of interested parties, and then when it was time to execute, just run as quickly as you can with all the negotiations and all of that to shorten the time you spend on the transaction, which is, yeah.
And of course, it helps to have several parties interested then.
Yes.
But
yes.
So what was it that made them so interested? What are the biggest advantages with your asset?
So I think, what we're trying to do is, when I sometimes simplify it with this asset, is an IVIG replacement. So replace the intravenous immunoglobulin market. And we should remember that the new management team from Alexion in part comes from Baxalta, which is old Baxter, that knows everything about the IVIG market. And that's a $10 billion plus market, and it's growing like crazy, and it's still a product that's from the 50s, the first ideas of having purified plasma proteins. So I think it was a deep understanding of what the potential of this drug class and the potential of our product in the class was that drove their interest.
And Per, in your case, what was the major success factors in that deal you made with Janssen?
Yeah, I mean, the basic stuff, of course, having a great product where we were really well positioned. So we were at the front in the field of CD40, and we had a better profile than the main competitor, which was Roche at that time. So that was key. And having a good product means a better product than the competition. So in immunotherapy, there might be 10 or 20 different companies having those products today. It's not enough having a good product anymore. You need to be better, and you still need to be better than all the competitors.
And so if you translate the situation you were in then to your current situation, would you say there are any similarities in that respect?
I mean, looking at our pipeline today, 1013 is at Johnson & Johnson. We have 1015, which we plan to develop ourselves a bit longer, and that's essentially because we know the clinical development path more or less exactly what we're going to do. CTLA-4 is already approved. We know where to take it, what patients will respond, and so on. So we think we have a great chance to carry that through to a point where we have demonstrated efficacy, and that will be an enormous valuation trigger, of course. Then we have 3 more products today that we can out-license, so that's a major upside. And all of them have their positioning, first-class potential, and so on, so they're all similar to what 1013 was at that time. Competition is stronger now, though.
So as they say, there's plenty more where that came from.
Yeah.
So David, how about you? You mentioned the US rights, for example, for the asset that you have licensed now. What does that imply?
So that implies that if everything is successful in the development of the drug and so on, then we have the potential to co-promote this drug in the US, which is of course means that we have to set up operations there and actually co-promote them.
You are actually, as opposed to Alligator and Per, you are not listed on the stock market, so you could speak freely here. You actually went ahead and did a share issue as well, or raised capital quite a short time before this deal. Why was that?
So at almost exactly the same time, yes. So there's a couple of reasons for that. So of course, I mean, if we step back and say, so what we're saying that we want to do a co-development, co-promotion, collaboration with a major company, because and why I say a major company is we wanted to expand the potential of the drug. And if I look at it from their perspective, now we have this kind of small company from the top of the world, that wants to do a co-promotion, co-development deal with us. How can you kind of ensure that we're around to do that? So part of that rights issue was to actually show a commitment from the owners of our company that we're in this for the long game. This is, this is the path we're taking. And to Per's point, I see a lot of new, what I sometimes call the biotech 2.0 model. We see younger and smaller companies taking products longer and longer in development and onto the market, and that has to be done with kind of strong partners and strong investors backing. So that's part of that mega trend, if you like, in our industry.
Yeah. And to your point on raising cash before, we did the same thing. It's always better to negotiate with money in the bank rather than being desperate with your back against the wall. So it's the best thing you can do.
Yeah. In hindsight, Per, since you have now a few years of experience after the deal, how has the deal with Janssen changed Alligator as a company?
Yes, for us it's been a perfect deal. We have had a great deal, of course, with a lot of money, and we have a great partner who can take all the development and commercialize the product itself. So for us, it's been a transforming deal, I would say. We have more than twice as big company today with 5 products instead of 2. So it's really enabled the company. As a biotech company, that kind of financial stability is everything that matters.
And has it also, in terms of opening doors to perhaps doors that were closed before you made the deal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having a deal with Johnson & Johnson, that makes us, we are taken seriously everywhere. We get meetings when we want meetings, not with every company at every time, but we are clearly taken as a serious player now.
So you know what to expect.
Yep.
Yeah. You have a strong pipeline of several assets in development, and you are, of course, then looking to repeat the success story. When is that going to happen?
Yeah, well, I would say we have a great chance to make a new deal within the next 2 years. We are already starting discussions with partners on some of our earlier products, like 1017 specifically, or 527. Those deals takes time, but within 2 years, I hope we will have a new deal.
And David, having just concluded one deal, maybe you're not like looking forward to the next already, but if you were planning on it, when would it happen, you say?
So no, I think that's actually a hard question to answer, because we are in discussions with other company, constantly about the things we do, and it could be anything from 10 months from now to 36 months from now. So it will really depend on data in our trials, data in the preclinical setting, and if we think we have a kind of a deal to make.
Yeah. I actually know that we have to conclude our program for today, because otherwise the live stream is going to go black.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to wonder what happened. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your experiences with us today.
Thank you.
Hope to see you in a year again.
Thank you.
And that also concludes the program for today. We're looking forward to the next BioStock Live, which will be in May. See you back then. Thank you.